You're going to apply to. My name is Clevenger. I'm the Associate Director of Student Affairs, and I'm joined by my colleague Nirmala, who I'll let you introduce. Who is our Director of Academics. And our third member of our team is Eric Gardner. He's in the back. He's our data analytics advisor. He's also an alum of the program, so can give you some answers to what the program was like just a few years ago when Eric completed it. And the missing member of our team. Oh yeah,
Moha, current student.
It's okay. I don't want to embarrass her. Moha, our grad assistant, is back there. She's a first-year student and can answer any questions you have about the program. She's from Australia, so she has a really fun accent if you want to. Sometimes I just have her say things and talk about Australia. And the missing member of our team is our Assistant Dean of Academic and Student Affairs, Leslie Everts. Unfortunately, she's out of the office today. She's very upset that she couldn't see you all, but trust me, if you come to the McCourt School, you will get to know Leslie incredibly well. She is the greatest asset for all of our students. So Nirmala and I are today going to walk you kind of through the academic life here at the McCourt School. Before we do that, I just wanted to get a few housekeeping items out of the way, just because this is a very old building and can be a little bit confusing. So if you're looking for restrooms, which is always something students want to ask but are worried about. So the men's room, if you go right out this hallway, it's right in front of you. The ladies' room, unfortunately, is all the way down the end of the hall. The reason for that, this is Old North. So this building was actually built in the 1790s. So it predates modern plumbing. So we don't have our own bathrooms, which we get a very beautiful old building, but we kind of have some experiences that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So we have a little bit of a hike to go and use the men's and ladies' rooms. So, any other housekeeping questions? Okay. Well, as the day goes on, you'll learn a little bit more about campus. We're sorry it's so gross and terrible out. Otherwise, we try to get you outside and give you a little tour, but we'll at least give you some pretty pictures so you know where you are.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. So I believe I may have spoken with some of you on the online chats or in person, perhaps even. But once again, welcome to the McCourt School. It's very exciting that you're here today. I must confess, when I found out I was going to be presenting information to you at 10:30 a.m., I posted on Facebook to all my friends and family that there are two people who are going to be talking at 10:30 a.m. on campus. One of them is me, and the other is Hillary Clinton. And they were all very impressed, except that they don't know you're my captive audience. You don't have a choice. So I'm going to try and entertain you as much as I can and give you information on what you can expect from us here at the McCourt School, and specifically related to your degree programs. So by show of hands, before I get started, how many here are MPP EP students? Evening program MPP. Oh, wonderful. Okay. How about NPM? Okay, a couple. And then the rest, MIDPs? Okay, lovely. And everybody else is MPP full-time. So wonderful. So we have representation across all of our 3 degree programs, including the 2 rollouts we have for the MPP, the full-time and the evening program. So what we'll do today is we'll talk a little bit about the degree programs, the curriculum, and I'm sure that most of you have looked at our website, you've looked through the curriculum, you understand, but I'll share a little details, a little secrets of how you can find out more information. We'll talk a little bit about faculty, and you've heard some from Dean Sir Drew about the wonderful people we have here at the McCourt School who teach classes. So I'll add a little bit of information to what he shared with you. We'll talk about international opportunities, because there are international opportunities. Jackie will share a whole bunch of information with you about that, and our wonderful McCourt School community. And then we'll take questions. So having said that, yeah, that's right. Technology, we don't blend, unfortunately. So I'm going to try and be as techno-savvy as I can and use my clicker, but forgive me if there was a faux pas. So before we dive into the degree programs, just so you know, of course, you know that we are a Jesuit institution, and so one of the things about being a Jesuit institution is caring for the entire person. So it isn't just about you coming in, getting a bunch of facts or a bunch of processes that you understand very well and graduating. It is about caring about your individual needs. The philosophy is called cura personalis. You'll see it in small ways in the classroom, you'll see it outside of the classroom. My colleagues and I, we're very concerned that you get the best benefit of what Georgetown University and the McCourt School have to offer. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the best part of our jobs really are interacting with our students one-on-one. A bunch of us, Eric, Jackie, Leslie, myself, we offer individual walk-in hours and sign-up hours, and we're happy to meet with you one-on-one as well to discuss your individual needs, because in as much as you're all sort of joining a program, whether it's the MPP, the MPM, the MIDP, your needs are unique and your needs are individual, and you are going to tailor your degree to those specific needs. So we want to make sure that what you get from us here at the McCourt School matches those needs. As far as our degree programs go, you know these are our three degree programs that we offer here at the McCourt School. When I started working here, which was 5 years ago, and time flies when you're having fun, 5 years ago, we were the Georgetown Public Policy Institute. In 2013, we received a naming gift and became the McCourt School of Public Policy. But the degree, the MPP degree, which is our flagship degree, goes well back, even past those 5 years, and has its roots in the government department here at Georgetown University. So there's a great deal of history to the program. There's a great deal of classes of students that have graduated and gone on to do wonderful things, and you'll meet some of them at the reception tonight. So the 3 degree programs, and then the dual degree programs. As you can see, most of our dual degrees are only affiliated with the MPP. We do have the MPM, we do have a flavor that's sort of being developed. It's in the works right now with an institution in South Korea. So there may be possibilities in the future for a dual degree for the MPM. But right now, these are our major dual degrees that we offer at the McCourt School, but they're only affiliated with the full-time MPP degree. Why do people consider dual degrees? Because sometimes a dual degree adds value to you in a way that nothing else can. Sometimes you can find a way to signal effectively to the market through your elective course choices with a specific degree. And sometimes you need the benefit of those 2 degrees working together to send out that signal credibly to the market. So the MPP degree, basically for the suite of dual degrees that you see here. By the way, anybody here admitted to okay, what dual degree?
The MPP MBA.
Perfect, okay. And how about you?
Foreign service.
Foreign service, excellent. So the MPP MSFS is the only dual degree that you have to be admitted to both programs at the same time to be in the dual degree. All of the other dual degrees, you can start with the MPP, you're admitted to the MPP, and then you decide to apply to another of the dual degrees. So for the MPP MBA, you start your first year at the McCourt School, and then you go on to the business school. In your 3rd year, you have a combination of classes. So the MPP completed full-time runs 2 years. Most dual degrees run 3 years, with the exception of the JD MBA, which is 4 years. So the IO MBA, a very exciting dual degree, is actually part at the McCourt School and part of the University of Geneva in Switzerland. And there's also another option to study abroad with a dual degree, and that is the MPP with the MA in German and European Studies, where students can then go on to the Hertie School and take some courses over there as part of the dual degree. We also have a couple of rollouts of the MPP with a PhD. One of them is government, the other is psychology. Pretty much for the most part, for all of our dual degree programs, we double count some courses. So the benefit of doing a dual degree is that you don't do the entire list of course requirements for both programs. There are some courses that count for both programs that you take only once. So there's some benefit. If you're interested, let's say in practicing law, and you're also interested in adding to that by having a public policy background, then you wouldn't be doing 2 years here with us and 3 years out at the law school, which would be a 5-year degree. It would be almost the equivalent of a PhD in terms of time. So having said that, dual degrees certainly have their place. They certainly have their value. But there are also other ways in which you can be strategic about your degree, even if you're just in the MPP program, but you want to take classes over the business school or the law center. We have ways in which we can help you do that, okay? All right. Moving on to the curriculum. So I'm hoping that everybody has taken a look at our webpage, the McCourt School webpage, and taken a look at the curriculum for each of the programs if you're interested in. I'll sort of cover a broad overview of what the programs, what the curriculum for each program is about, but I'd like to talk about the MPP full-time and the MIDP sort of in parallel. Because in a lot of ways, those two programs are very similar, the only difference being that for the MIDP program, the focus is on international development for all of your core courses, and you also have 2 more core courses than the MPPs that focus specifically on international development. So, 48 credit hours for the MPP and the MIDP programs. The McCourt School is unique in that at the last time that we benchmarked, we're the only school that actually has a 3 quant course sequence. What does that mean in terms of how it impacts you? What it says effectively once you graduate with the MPP or the MIDP is that you have a very strong set of quantitative analysis skills. And anybody in the market that is looking for that finds credibility in that signal. So they understand that you're very good at this, you understand data analysis, you understand evidence-based policymaking, you understand how to crunch the numbers and to make sure that the recommendations that you are making actually match the evidence numerically. So for the MPP, you have 3 of your quant courses as your core, likewise for the MIDP. You also have 2 courses in intermediate microeconomics, and so those courses essentially are part of your core. They form the base of your degree together with your quant courses. So we've already talked about 9 credits of quant courses, 6 credits of economics courses as part of your core, and now we're going to talk about the more applied part of the curriculum. So as part of looking at the way that policy works, the way that it's shaped, managing these institutions and understanding the hierarchy in these institutions and understanding the ethical rules that govern policy making, you have 3 of your core courses that specifically focus on these issues. So your process class, your public management class, and your ethics class, because you're a Jesuit institution, you're going to have an ethics class as part of your curriculum. But the interesting thing about these 3 classes is that we have 2 flavors of them, if you will. So for those of you that are interested in working domestically or looking at policy analysis in a domestic framework, we have the domestic track for each of these 3 core classes. And for those of you that are interested in a more global suite or might be targeting a job overseas at some point, we have the comparative versions for each of these classes. So we encourage you, when you start the program, especially if you're a full-time student and you really are looking at a career overseas or you're looking at working at an organization overseas at some stage of your future, consider the comparative track versus the domestic track. We also encourage you to pick a track and stick with it. However, we don't monitor it in that we don't require you to stick with, let's say you start with your comparative process class. In a future semester, if you want to take the domestic public management class, we don't actively say no, you can't do it, but we encourage you to pick a track and stick with it for your core curriculum for the applied courses. And then the question that I get asked most often has to do with your capstone experience. So for those of you that are MPP students, you have a choice between a thesis and a client-based project capstone. You don't come up against this choice until your 2nd semester in the program. So you don't have to worry about it in your 1st semester if you're a full-time student. If you're an evening program student, you don't come up against this choice until your 4th semester in the program. Essentially what happens is that the capstone, which is, by the way, in understanding pedagogy, a capstone is a class that actually uses all of the core that you've been taught and helps you to apply that knowledge in some practical way. The capstone is an experience worth 6 credits, so you take a class in the fall and in the spring. It's cyclical, so you have to make sure that you're following that cycle. You get to choose between working on your own topic interest. So for the thesis, you get to pick a research question that interests you and to actively work on that under the guidance of the thesis advisor for 2 semesters. Is Eric still in the back?
Yeah.
Okay, so Eric Gardner is our...
Asking, sorry.
So Eric is an alum of the MPP program. He is also the person that advises students on data analysis for both the thesis and the client-based capstone. At the McWhorter School, the statistical software package that we use for data analysis is Stata. So Eric is a Stata guru. He would be the person that would help you to sort of pick your data set, to understand what you're looking at, to think about what you need in terms of your thesis. Eric, can you say anything at all about some of the students that you work with and the interest areas that you've seen for thesis?
Right. Since September, I've had well over 200 individual meetings with students one-on-one, and so their topics range from anything that are in any policy area, as long as there's data that you can use to provide a basis for your research hypothesis. The research, I usually use operational lens, but not everyone might know that. But it's ultimately for the thesis, less so for the capstone, although there's data involved, but for the thesis you have a very narrow research hypothesis within a certain policy area. It won't be that something broad about health policy or environmental policy. But you're going to have a narrow research hypothesis, and in order to measure the outcome, you need to have sufficient data. So I work with students. So students will come to me over the summer and in September, and they'll want to just kind of kick potential ideas around based on the background research they've done. I'll also help them with data management, which is a challenging element to the thesis. And also programming. I also know SAS, so sometimes data is in SAS, and we have to get it into Stata. Some students on the back end will use R. But I work with students throughout the whole process, and I'm also helping some students with looking over their results section. But you'll have an individual advisor, and there's another person who works with students on econometrics that helps back up. So there's a lot of support to the thesis, but it's the capstone of, Nirmala probably said this, but it kind of pulls together everything in the program, and you ultimately become the expert not only on your data, but on this particular policy area. And there's a ton of data out there, and so on virtually any topic, you come up with data. So,
if anybody was apprehensive in any way about data analysis or support that we provided in the McWhorter School, Eric's words should be very reassuring. So for the thesis, we have Eric and we have a PhD student in economics who actively provide data analysis support to students for the thesis. For the client-based capstone, depending on your own particular needs, and some people decide that they want to work like a team. They're less interested in working on a particular area. They're more interested in working on a project that is client-based, that is real-world, and is applied and relevant to a particular client. And so the client-based capstone adds value to those students. It gives them an opportunity to select from a list of about, we have about 10 to 15 projects we receive every year that our faculty actively go through, make sure that these fit the requirements and the learning goals of the MPP program, and then present a list to our students to choose from. As client-based capstone students, you would select your top 5 or 6 projects. You would then be assigned to work in a team of anywhere between 3 to 5 on the same project. Okay, so much for the capstone experience for the MPP program. The MIDP, the capstone, works very similar to the MPP client-based capstone process, except that the topics that are presented to the MIDP students are more focused on international development, naturally. Just to give you an idea of some of our clients that we've had this past year, The Baltimore Police Department has asked us, students, to work on a project related to technology, the use of technology in districting. The Organization of American States had a project about measurement of open government. And then DEI had a project, I don't remember the specifics that they were looking at. I think it related to education outcomes by country. And then, who else did we have? We've had Booz Allen in the past, the Department of Defense, a project related to military activity and information gathering. So we tend to be fairly diverse in the kinds of projects that you'll see for the client-based capstone. Okay. So, having told you about the core classes, the classes that you are required to take for the MPP program, the MIDP program, fairly similar except 2 more required core classes specifically related to international development. For the MPP program, you have a choice of 18 credits of elective courses. The MIDP program, because 2 of your core courses eat into that, you have 12 credits of electives that you can take as part of your program. So, in sum for the MPP and likewise for the MIDP, oops, sorry. I'm going back. There. Okay. I told you that's a technology challenge. So the MIDP as well, you can see what the breakdown of the credits looks like. MPP and MIDP fairly parallel in terms of the required courses, the difference being the focus on international development for the MIDP, as well as fewer elective credits, so 12 elective credits for the MIDP. For those of you that are evening program students, how does this play out over your 3 years? In your first fall semester, you start first year pretty much all required classes, right? So you're talking about your Micro 1, Quant 1 in the first semester, Micro 2, Quant 2 in the second semester. In the summer, you take process and management. Now, in the summer, we only offer the domestic version of process and management, so if you are interested in the comparative versions of these classes, you have a choice between taking these particular classes either during the day in the fall or the spring semesters, or sometimes we offer them in the evenings, so you can swap out an elective in the summer for your process and management classes. In your second year for MPP EP students, all electives, so 12 credits of electives, fall and spring, and then in the summer of your second year, you take your Quant 3 and your ethics class, and then in your final year, you have your 1 remaining elective and thesis or capstone, and your final semester, the culmination of thesis or capstone, and your final elective, okay? All right. So, going to the MPM curriculum, and this is a bit different. So the MPM is our degree program that is targeted at mid-career professionals. And so it's a shorter program, it's 36 credit hours, and MPM can be completed in 1 calendar year, undertaken full-time. The MPM also uniquely has summer classes that are all core classes that are only offered during the summer in a different format. So they're offered as intensive 1 week, 3 credit classes over the summer. These are classes that touch upon essentially your ethics and your process and your innovation and economics. But essentially, these courses are courses that cannot be completed at any time during the year. So if you are an MPM student and if you work full-time, then you might need to take the particular weeks of these core classes off so that you can finish them up during the summer. For the MPM curriculum also, you have, during the fall, you have the research methods class, which all MPM students must take in the fall semester. We offer both a day section and an evening section. There's also a choice between your economic analysis and your program management classes in the fall versus the spring. And you have to complete those classes, but you can choose to take them in either semester. And then for the MPM program, as you probably know right now, it's not as quantitatively rigorous as the MPP or the MIDP, but that's because MPM students, when they graduate, are considered more consumers of public policy, not so much producers of public policy and research. And then for MPM students, You have a capstone experience as well, and that is typically in the spring semester. It's worth 3 credits. You don't have to find a data set, and you don't have to run those analyses. You do have to do a literature review. You do have to come up with a research question that is meaningful to you, and that is not super wide, so something that you can narrow down and work on in 1 semester. Okay, for the MPM program, you get to take 12 credits of electives. I'll talk a little bit about the electives too, because I think the electives are where you get to personalize your degree program and make it meaningful to you and your specific needs. So, electives. Different areas of public policy, different areas to maybe find that you want to specialize in, or take a wide variety of different area-based courses as part of your electives, depending on how many electives you need for your degree program. The areas that you've probably even looked at on our website, economic policy, education policy, environmental policy, health policy, development, homeland security, all of these, if you look, and here's my 2 cents to you, I think this will be meaningful. If you haven't done this yet, go to our webpage, go to the faculty page, read through the research interests of the faculty. Find out and see if there's somebody here at the McCourt School, and I'm willing to bet you money there is somebody whose research interests match your role, okay? Faculty, we have strong bench strength in health policy. Professor Barbara Shoney, whom you met earlier, health policy expert. Our former dean, Judy Fader, another health policy expert. Education policy, we have Jane Hanaway, who's here with us. Nora Gordon, another one of our faculty members whose research focus is education policy. She's teaching a new course this fall, Education Policy and Civil Society, for those of you that are interested in education policy. Environmental and regulatory policy, Pasha Madavi and Rafael Kalel are 2 of our faculty members, if any of you are interested in environmental policy. And Jackie will even talk to you later about things you can do outside of the classroom that are specific policy area interests. And then Homeland Security, National Security Policy, Development Policy. You've heard Professor Beebe talk earlier about faculty members here at the McCourt School who helped shape the MIDP program, whose research interest is development policy. Andrew Jaclyn is one of them. Jennifer Tobin is another. James Javier Romana, who won't be with us this year, but typically also teaches a course in the history of international development. For those of you who are new to international development or are interested in it in some way, his course very likely will be offered fall 2018, would be a good elective. And then, to talk a little bit about management and leadership, we also have people like Kathy Krepman, who teaches a course in public leadership, very popular offering. Economic policy, by the way, if I didn't mention it, Alice Rublin is one of our faculty members. If you're not familiar with her work, or you don't know who she is and you're interested in economic policy, look up her page on our website. Also, our dean, Ed Montgomery, teaches a class in macroeconomics. I think macroeconomics is something that, in my humble opinion, I think would be a wonderful add to the core curriculum, but the trouble is that would make it too heavy core, and we do want you to have enough elective choice. But macroeconomics is a wonderful way to understand the big levers of economic policy making. And then political strategy and governance, because we are in Washington, D.C., we're often able to attract practitioners who can come in and teach a short course for us. I should mention that as far as electives go, we have 3 credit options and 1.5 credit options. So let's say, for instance, your interest area is health policy, but you are kind of curious about education as well. But you don't want to spend your whole 3 credits of your electives, because you have so few, on education policy. So we offer short 1.5 credit short burst courses. These are half semester module classes. Some of them meet in the first half of the semester, some of them in the second half. They all count towards your degree requirements of the electives, and so you're welcome to select from them as well. They tend to be kind of intense. So we often advise people not to take 2 modules in the same half of the semester. But they're a great way to get some very intense knowledge about a particular policy area without spending all of your elective bandwidth on that, at least more than you want. And then talking about methods, actually. I did want to say something more specific about methods, and I know I'm getting very granular here, but these are the kinds of conversations I have with students in academic advising, right? And I think it's relevant for you, it's important for you to know before you begin your program here that you have active support in being strategic in picking out your electives. So for methods, essentially what falls under the umbrella of methods is things like data visualization or spatial data analysis, things that are active, hard skills that you can sell in your resume that are meaningful to the market. Sometimes there is this notion of sort of ivory tower academics. I can assure you that most of our faculty are practitioners as well. But the methods classes, I think, give you an opportunity to be very specific and very targeted in the way that you choose your electives, so that if you're gunning for a certain job past graduation, if there are specific skills related to that job, the methods classes might give you an opportunity to find those skills and get them on your resume, okay? Okay, all right. So much for electives at the McCourt School. These are just a sampling of our fall 2017 electives, and I promised you when I started out that I would share a little tidbit with you about how you can access more information. So, here's the information. When you are searching for your electives, even before you start the program, right? Go to registrar.georgetown.edu, okay? And then under Schedule of Classes, click on that. And then you click on Main Campus under Fall 2017, and you search by Public Policy as your subject area. That will pull up for you all of the classes that we are offering here at the McCourt School in the fall 2017 semester. Now, the interesting thing about doing that is if you scroll through, all our electives are the 600 level and up. If you click on a class, you will be able to access the course syllabus. So you'll be able to see, using your NetID and password of course, you'll be able to see what the course syllabus for an elective class that looks interesting to you might be. And this research is valuable because it equips you with the knowledge before you come in. If you're a full-time student and you're in the MPP or the MIDP program, you'll only be taking the one elective in the fall. So well ahead of the game, you know what electives you're interested in, you narrow down what you want, and you have complete information based on the past year's syllabi for some of these courses. Of course, there are some new courses for which the syllabi won't be posted until very late in the semester, but even the course description, I think, can give you a very good view of what you can expect in those courses, okay? So I've mentioned Alice Rivlin before. She teaches national economic issues. Our dean, Ed Montgomery, will be teaching macroeconomics. Education and civil rights, I mentioned Nora Gordon. And then the whole list of them from right on there. Spatial data modeling, we talked about as the methods class. Data visualization, another methods class. Negotiation, a very good soft skills elective option. This is just within the McCourt School, by the way. As McCourt School students, for the MPP and the MIDP for full-time students, this doesn't apply to your first semester, but past your first semester, and those of you that are in the MPM program starting in the fall, you will have the opportunity to also request courses outside of the McCourt School, okay? So, let's say for instance, your interest is transportation policy, and we're not offering a class of transportation policy. So, in the spring of 2018, what we would do is we would sit down together and look at the elective options outside of the McCourt School. And I'll walk you through how that happens as well. Georgetown University, as you know, has a good number of departments and schools. We have the business school, we have the law school, we have the School of Foreign Service. All of these allow us excellent options for dual degrees, but they also allow our students an opportunity to look at elective offerings outside of the McCourt School and request them. The process is a bit tedious, I will admit, and I'm not always able to get you all the courses you might want. If you ask me for Madeline Albright's class in the School of Foreign Service, they will not give it to me. even if I promised them my firstborn. But having said that, are people able to take classes outside of McCourt School? Yes. I have good working relationships with my counterparts at the various schools. I also coordinate an exchange for all of the graduate level programs here at the McCourt School, so I try to get as much as I can for our students. But that means I also have to give away classes from the public policy rollout, and that's why I will never give away a class that involves EJ Dion and Paul Bagala. They're very popular. I want to make sure that you as our students have the first pick at our very popular public policy offerings. Okay, so having said that, that's just one way in which you can look at courses outside of the McCourt School, right? So let's say you're interested in transportation policy. Nobody else is offering, we're not offering an elective course in transportation policy. Nobody else at Georgetown University is either. But I was able to solve this problem for one of our students because George Mason was offering a course in transportation policy. We're very fortunate to be a part of something called a consortium here in Washington, D.C. And what that is a bunch of D.C. area schools having an agreement that we will allow students across our universities to take a class that might add value to them. I used to work at American University before I came to Georgetown, so I've already seen the value of the consortium. I've been able to encourage McCourt students to take advantage of it as well. I was able to find a class on science policy specifically related to NASA for one of our students, a transportation policy class for another student, a more applied journalism class for another student. So things here at the McCourt School, what we do isn't rocket science. What we try to do is to make sure that we break down barriers that exist so that you as our students have a wider array of selection for the courses that you might want or need, okay? So having said that arrangement happens at the staff level. We also have faculty who are very, very dedicated to your success. And this is a personal testimony. I've seen faculty members get involved with students' job searches. I've seen them get involved with helping students network. So the community here at the McCourt School is terrific. The faculty are the backbone of that community. Their research interests and their quality of mind certainly adds to the value of the McCourt education, but their willingness to be a part of your success story is, I think, what really clinches it for me. Okay, so our faculty are engaged in teaching, they're engaged in research, they're also engaged in public service, and they're also engaged in consulting, in work outside of the McCourt School. So essentially, what they bring to the classroom is informed by experience not just within academia, but also outside of it. So once again, I cannot urge you strongly enough to take a look at our faculty, to take a look at their specific research interests and what they have to offer, okay? And then I'm going to turn this presentation over to Jackie Clevenger to tell you more about what you can expect in terms of learning outside the classroom. But I will be here and we'll take questions once Jackie has concluded her presentation. Thanks, Nirmala. Sure.
So I'm going to try and get through this relatively quickly because I want to give you guys enough time at the end to ask all of your questions about academics. But basically, my role at McCourt School, I'm kind of the cruise director. So while Nirmala and Leslie are going to be helping you manage all of your academics, I'm kind of doing everything else. Everything from helping you find housing if you're new to Washington, D.C., figuring out how to ride the metro, it'll be fun. And, getting you, to learn about the different organizations on campus that you can get involved in, communicating to you about all the fun events that we have going on, and everything else. So I'm kind of like your go-to resource for anything fun that you could be involved in outside the classroom. We just wanted to highlight a little bit, and today is honestly a perfect example of the exposure that you get to policy leaders. This is not an unusual day here at Georgetown to have the Secretary Clinton on campus. Everything from your day-to-day instructors to the guest lectures that we bring in. I know Dean Sergio talked about the policy dinners that we host. We had the ambassador from Switzerland here just this week. There's so many things going on here on campus that we really want to give you guys as much exposure to the world that you're going to be entering into after you graduate. It's not just something where we want you to, come to be in an academic bubble for 2 years, and then when you graduate, we're going to pop that bubble. No, we want you guys to know what the real world is going to be like. A lot of you are coming to us from jobs. You know what you're getting yourselves into. A lot of you are maybe making a transition from one career to the next. And so we want to really get you as much exposure to what your careers are going to be like on a day-to-day basis while you're here at North School. Okay? So another thing that I do manage is our international opportunities. Just see what's on the next slide. Okay. So it's easy to kind of live within the Washington, D.C. bubble, be inside the Beltway. There is a large world outside of D.C. So I also want to make sure that students not only get to know D.C. while they're here, and I don't just mean get to know the federal government, I also mean get to know what local D.C. is like, because D.C. is an actual working city, and I want you guys to know where you're going to live for the next few years. But for a lot of our students, you're interested in more international work, and so we want to make sure that you get that exposure internationally as well. So the first way that we do that is with our credit program. So we do also have, in addition to our dual degree with the International Organization MBA at the University of Geneva, we do have some just shorter exchange programs for our students. Maybe you don't want to do the full dual degree. Maybe you're just looking to go away for the fall, do one exchange. So these are our fall exchange programs. The first is with the Hardy School of Governance, Berlin. A lot of our students are very interested in European Union policy. It's also a very interesting time to study immigration policy in Germany. There's a lot of students that participate in that exchange. We also work with the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, and that's in Singapore. Singapore is a fascinating place to study sustainability policy. They kind of do a lot of interesting things around the environment, but also kind of, a center hub if you're interested in Asian policy as well. So we have a lot of students that do those exchange, which means that we're sending students to Germany and to Singapore, and they're sending students here. So they're with us in the fall semester as well. Some of our newer programs, one is with the Korean Development Institute. That's in South Korea, and Nirmala mentioned that briefly before, and that's with our MPM program. Right now, we only have students from Korea coming to the MPM program, but our hope is within the next year that we're going to have the opportunity for our MPM students to go to Korea as well to participate in that program. And then the newest exchange program is with the Jindal School of Public Policy in India, and that's another fall exchange program. So these are for our MPP students. If the MPP program for full-time students is only 2 years, so you have to really spend some time thinking about if you want to spend an entire semester abroad. But I will tell you that the students that have participated in these programs, and including the dual degree with the IOMBA, have absolutely loved it. It's really cemented their experience. I don't have it listed here, but we have been starting to offer more short-term excursions for our students. We don't want you to just, feel like I don't want to go away for a semester, so I can't do any type of international experience while we're here. In the past few years, we've been doing a lot of shorter spring break and winter break trips. So in the past 2 years, we've been to the Dominican Republic. We went to Argentina. Professor Shoni mentioned that she was with students in Mexico City this past spring break. Those are completely student-driven trips. So basically, they come to me with an idea of where they want to travel, and then we build a trip from there. So the burden is really on you guys as students to tell me where to go next. Latin and South America have been popular in the past year, and I think that's because we've had a number of students from those regions and a lot of students that are becoming very more interested in those regions as well. But we're already starting to talk about where can we go next. A lot of our students that are involved in our South Asian, policy group are interested in bringing their classmates back home to India, showing them what it's like. Moha, we kick around about bringing students to Australia, which I think would be a tremendous trip. It would be very long flight. I'd have to convince people to do that. But, we really want you guys to get exposure, enjoy your spring breaks and have a little bit of time to meet policy leaders and have fun too. So I want to also talk to you guys a little bit about our community. Is anyone else getting really hot? You guys, I can see a couple of you guys standing yourselves. Okay, I'm going to pop this open. Hopefully we don't get wet. And if I see Hillary, I will stop and I will have you guys all look out the window. Just so you know. This is a fun little fact. So when special guests come to Georgetown, The secure entrance is through our building. So there have been many times where we have been in our office and all of a sudden Secret Service walks in and is like, ma'am, I need you to stay where you are. And because they bring them up to our 3rd floor and go in. So it's really fun because sometimes you'll see me in my window and I'm like, who's here? Anyway, this is all on video too, so it's gonna be great. So a little bit about our community. Our student population is our students are really engaged. And I think most of you probably would agree, you don't want to come to grad school just to study. You want to get to know your classmates, you want to get involved, you want to get to know where you're living, get to know your professors, and we really, really encourage that. We want you to make the most of your experience here. It's going to fly by. It's a lot shorter than undergrad, so we really want you to do as much as you can within reason while you're in grad school. So I want to tell you a little bit about all the different student organizations and activities that you'll have a chance to get involved in while you're here. It's small type because it's a pretty long list and this isn't even everything. But honestly, there's so many things you can get involved in while you're here depending on your policy interests. The first one that I want to point out is the McCourt School has what's called the Institute of Politics and Public Service. We call it GU Politics because the name otherwise is very, very long. So as part of our naming gift from McCourt, they wanted to create our own IOP, is what the short term is. A lot of policy schools in the United States do have them, and we really wanted to create a hub for students to get exposure to policy leaders. There is no other Institute of Politics in Washington, D.C. at any other university. So they have been around for 2 years now. They started in fall 2015. Basically what they do is every semester we're bringing in 5 fellows. And these are fellows from politics, from journalism, any kind of public service that you can think of. They're here with us for a semester and they offer weekly classes. So these are just kind of, opportunities for you to go and meet with a fellow, kind of learn about their experience and go from there. Some good examples, last year we had Laura Chinchilla, who's the former president of Costa Rica, first female president of Costa Rica. She's actually a McCourt alum. She has her MPP from us. And this was before the election here in the United States, so there was a very hot topic about having a female president and what that would be like. This semester we have, we always have people from both sides of the aisle. We have one of Hillary's campaign directors as one of our fellows, and then we also have someone that was on Trump's marketing team. We often put the two of them together and kind of let them fight it out. They're very good friends, but then, we have to let them fight it out a little bit. Other fellows this semester, the former Deputy Director of Communications for the White House, Jen Psaki. We have one of the writers for Politico, Anna Palmer. If any of you guys subscribe to Politico, she's the one that writes that morning brief that gets sent out. So she has very, very early mornings and then comes to us in the afternoon to meet with our students. And then the last fellow that we have with us this semester is Grover Norquist. Any of you guys know who he is? I can see some smirks. Very interesting guy. He runs the American Tax Reform Association, which if you guys don't know what that is, I encourage you to look it up. It's basically the pledge where they try to get politicians to sign a pledge that they're never going to raise taxes if they're elected. And if then they raise taxes, they're basically like called out and kind of like blackballed by this organization. It's very fascinating. It was started in the 80s under President Ronald Reagan's request, and it's kind of exploded from there. So those are just the 5 fellows that we have on campus this semester. In addition to the fellows program, Geopolitics is also doing a ton of other things during the semester, bringing speakers to campus. During the election last fall, we had, a number of events every single week leading up to the election, getting students involved. We were bringing students to the conventions over the summer. After the election, we are having basically an exit interview series where we invited all of the cabinet members from the Obama administration to come talk to our students about their experiences under the Obama administration. And then to keep things fair, we also offered a counterpoint. So, if we brought in, Tom Perez when he was, Secretary of Labor, we also brought in a conservative person to come talk about, what happened in labor under the Obama administration. So, again, incredible exposure to leaders. They're doing a lot of really, really great work. The rest of the groups here are all different kinds of student organizations here within the McCourt School. So everything from our Georgetown Public Policy Student Association, which is our student government, the Georgetown Public Policy Review, that is our completely student-run journal. They have an online edition. It actually launched yesterday. So if you guys just Google Georgetown Public Policy Review, you'll be able to see their brand new edition. I'll let you know the title for this year's edition was Disruption, which they picked a week before Brexit happened. I don't think they realized how relevant disruption would be as a theme, so they really lucked out this year. A number of other groups kind of focusing on different policy areas. There's a Women in Public Policy group, Public Policy Out, our LGBT organization, EduWonks, Education Policy. I know they mentioned before our Food and Health Research group, aka FARM. You have to have a good acronym. That's my only rule to become a student organization. Other groups that are a little bit more topical, we have our regional groups, Latin American Policy Association, South America Policy Group, East Asian Policy Group, McCourt Environment and Energy, or McCourt E&E, and then we also have a debate society, which is really fun. There are a couple other groups on here that I'm just going to point out that are a little bit different. So we have what's called the Policy Innovation Lab, which is actually, no, this one. Do you want me to point it for you? No, there's a laser pointer here. You can't see it on the screen. Policy Innovation Lab, that is run by one of our faculty members, Margaret O'Brien. And it's basically an organization within McCourt to get students more involved in local communities here in DC. If you guys don't know, DC is split up into wards. That's kind of how the community is broken up. Wards 7 and 8 are east of the Anacostia River, and typically that is where you see the highest levels of poverty in DC. And so the Policy Innovation Lab specifically focuses on working with Wards 7 and 8 to offer policy solutions to local issues that are really relevant in that area. So for those of you who are interested in local issues or just getting to know Washington a little bit more while you're here, it's a really great group to get involved in. Another group to get involved in, McCourt Policy and Practice. That's basically our international development and service organization. So it started out with an alum a little over 10 years ago who had a connection with Roatan, Honduras. And basically, the McCourt students started having a sister city type of relationship with Roatan. They went down there, they helped install a water filtration system, a garbage disposal system, they helped build a school, they helped do kind of like business development programs for the people who live in Roatan. Since then, they have actually moved out of the Roatan community and are now working with Cabarete in the Dominican Republic. Doing some work with a local school there and also some environmental projects as well. So it's typically a big interest for our NYDP students that are very interested in international development, obviously, but it's open to any student at McCourt. So if you're at all interested in doing international work while you're here, it's a great group to get involved in. The last thing that just because it's my favorite, is the Public Policy Challenge. So this is a competition that I host every year that challenges McCourt students to think about local issues here in Washington, D.C. and develop a policy solution. So this year, we have a little competition here at Georgetown, and the winning team wins some prize money. They developed basically a workforce development program moved into local libraries in Ward 7 and 8 because they were realizing, for those of you who know Washington, the only workforce programs for adults who didn't have their GED were in the MLK library in Gallery Place. If you live in Ward 7, getting down to Gallery Place is not always the easiest thing to do, and that library recently closed 2 weeks ago and is going to be closed for 3 to 4 years for development. So all of a sudden, all of these adults had nowhere to go and do this project. So they are working together to leverage libraries and move their work into that group. The team that wins the Public Policy Challenge here at Georgetown, I bring to the national competition, which is hosted by the University of Pennsylvania, where it's all different policy graduate students from across the country get together and present the ideas that they've come up with their local, for their local community. So it's a really great way to kind of meet some other policy students across the country, talk about local issues. They bring in some really great judges. It's also a great networking opportunity, which is important, and get exposure that way. So before I leave this slide, I just wanted to kind of put into picture what a typical week is for McCourt students. So I actually made a list of what my week has been like, just to give you guys an idea of all the different things that you can get involved in. So in the past week here at Georgetown, I took the Georgetown Public Policy Challenge team to Philadelphia for the national competition, where they were named a finalist. So I spent a quick 48 hours in Philly. Last night, the Georgetown Public Policy Review had their spring launch, so they had a big panel to talk about the idea of disruption and whether or not it's a good thing in the world of policy and government. And then we had a nice little cocktail hour afterwards. We've also had, Echelon's hosted the superintendent of DC schools. That was on Wednesday night to talk about education issues here in DC. We had a lunch with Grover Norquist, one of the geopolitics fellows. The Debate Society hosted a debate. The topic was Russia, friend or foe. Which you can imagine, that was a very interesting debate. The Georgetown Public Policy Student Association is currently having elections. The Latin American Policy Association is hosting a conference today and tomorrow where they invite Latin American policy students, graduate students from across the country to come to DC and have a conference to kind of meet with local Latin American leaders, ambassadors and things like that are here in Washington and talk about policy issues that specifically impact Latin America. That's today and tomorrow. Tom Perez, former Secretary of Labor, now Chairman of the DNC, was here to talk about the future of the Democratic Party. Geopolitics is currently with a bunch of students in Georgia covering the special election in Georgia for the seat that was vacated by Secretary Price, who's the home HHS Secretary now. We also have a fellow here this semester. His name is Matt Colangelo. He was on the Economic Council for the White House. So he hosted a study lunch this week with our students about race and voting rights. What else? Oh, and another thing, which is where a lot of faculty members are today, we're hosting another conference today about nonprofits and performance management and how you can improve the nonprofit world. So that was my week. And that's typical. You guys have heard it before, that one of the hardest things in grad school is to figure out how to spend your time. There's a lot of really exciting things going on, and you guys are real people who have real jobs, real families, real friends, so you kind of have to pick and choose what are the things that you're most passionate about and figure out what the best ways are to devote your time. So I just wanted to point out a few other things about the McCourt School, and then we'll go to questions. So McCourt also has a number of research centers. So a lot of these are either managed by our faculty members, they're conducting research, they're getting grants and publishing articles and all those things like that. These are a few that I just wanted to point out so you guys are just aware of the other fun things that you can get involved in while you're here. We have ones on public and nonprofit leadership, education in the workforce, a center on health insurance reforms, which is pretty relevant right now. The one we call GUIDE, which is the Georgetown University Initiative on Innovation, Development, and Evaluation, which is why we call it GUIDE. It's a lot of our international development faculty members manage that. One of the biggest things that I'll point out, they help students find summer internships, especially with development projects in Africa. So every year we have a number of students that are traveling to different countries in Africa to work on really exciting projects. Juvenile justice reform, they're the ones, they're hosting a big conference next week where they're bringing in all different kinds of juvenile justice leaders here in the United States for a 2-day conference. So lots of exciting things going on the research side here at McCourt. So I'm going to stop there and leave it here on that slide. This is a lot of information, and we're really sorry to kind of inundate you, but we want to make sure you know as much as you possibly can so you can make the most informed decisions you can. We are all about informed policy decision making, so we want to make sure that in your graduate selection process you're also consuming as much information as you can and making those informed decisions as well. So we have a few more minutes for questions. Does anyone have questions about academics or student life?
Thank you. I'm a sort of admitted FPP student. Technical question first. Are you going to make the slides available to us afterwards?
I can.
Yeah, we could send them out in PDF format, and we'll have Lindsay share them with you. I believe she has a list of all of our attendees for today. So
yes. We don't have all of your information yet until you give us your deposit, but we'll ask the admissions office to do that for you.
Thank you. The second question for the core classes, and I suppose for the people who've taken econ and statistics and quantitative methods in undergrad, what is, or is there a procedure of waiving out of those classes and opening up more electives?
Yeah, I can answer that for you. For all of our core courses, we offer students the opportunity to take a waiver exam. Now, for MPP students who are starting in the fall semester, the waiver exams that will be available will be the Micro 1 and the Quant 1 course. If there's either of those are classes that you feel you've taken equivalent coursework before, you're welcome to apply to take the waiver exam. The committee will then decide whether there's enough substance to your application for you to be allowed to take the exam. The exam will be scheduled shortly before orientation, in that same week of orientation. If you pass the exam, you will be allowed to take an elective instead of the exam, the course of the exam that you just passed. So let's say you passed the Quant 1 exam, you'll be allowed to replace it with an elective.
So on the flip side, because the other question that we often get is, what if I haven't taken a math course in a very long time? I run orientation, and one of the fun parts of orientation is math camp, which sounds scary now. We have had, everyone loves math camp, and Barbara Shoney, she will tell you on the first day of math camp that we've had students who met at math camp and ended up falling in love and getting married. So you have to come in. It's just a ritual, you have to go. So basically, it's a way to kind of, trigger those brain cells that maybe haven't looked at math equations in a while, to kind of get you guys back up to speed so that everyone is kind of on a level playing field when your classes start in the fall.
Just to add to that, Professor Shoney also has an online course that she structures that's available for purchase to admitted students. So if you feel like you want additional support, that's also another resource available to you. And then I should have mentioned this earlier, but I run for the intermediate microeconomics, I run study groups that are completely voluntary. So if you're a bit apprehensive about coming back to intermediate microeconomics after a while, or even if you're somebody who feels like you understand it, but you want to challenge yourself a little bit, these voluntary study groups are a great place to actually roll up your sleeves and do some problem solving with other students. So you do paired problem solving, and you work under the guidance of a trained peer leader who's a second-year student who's done well in the class and that Professor Shoney has recommended. And I train them every week in issues related to pedagogy so that you have efficient group dynamics and that you're able to actively work out problems in microeconomics related to the content that you've covered just the week before. Okay, so just in time frame. Yeah.
Is there funding for like international field work for thesis research?
Not that I know of. Nobody's asked that question before, so it's a great question. But there's certainly the...
Yes. Which program are you?
MPP, yeah.
Okay, that changes a few things. So one thing that we offer funding for students this summer between their first year and their second year, especially for students that are pursuing unpaid internships, which is where we honestly find that a lot of students kind of are developing their ideas for their thesis during that summer while they're doing some work. So the funding isn't necessarily there for thesis research, but the funding is there for you guys to do these kind of travel opportunities, internship opportunities, where you can kind of get started on those projects.
Very good chunk of change.
Yes.
Does the school also subsidize all of those spring break trips you're talking about, or is that just students pay for themselves?
So the spring break trips are, for the most part, students pay for at least their travel. Usually what we try to arrange is like a lot of like the meetings and meals and things like that. So for the trip to Mexico, students were in charge of covering their flight. So, and I think a couple of, they extended the trip after their meetings with the officials to do a couple of fun days in Mexico. Students are on their own for those fun days, but we do try to offset as much as we can.
Could you talk a little bit more about the consortium and which schools are involved and how difficult it is to get classes at different universities?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main usage has been at American University, George Washington, George Mason, and there has been some Catholic is also part of it. I haven't seen anything from Marymount. If you're interested in coursework through SICE or Johns Hopkins, we can do that as transfer credit instead of consortium. There's also, with the consortium, if you are taking an elective, let's say in the summer, it's not governed by the consortium. So if you're a resident of Virginia, you can avail of in-state tuition for that. So there are certainly ways in which the consortium is extremely valuable to students. The difficulty is if a class is full, then there's no way around it, unfortunately. But that doesn't happen very often. So I've seen that, I'd say about 25% of the time that a student doesn't get the consortium class. What happened this past spring was I had a student who wanted a class at American University at the business school. He wanted a taxation and accounting class. And so I got him in touch with the professor, and we determined everything would work out, except they didn't confirm his seat until the last minute. So there is that with the consortium registration, is that it can sometimes feel a little bit, it's sort of like have a backup plan if you go the consortium route. 75% of the time, I've seen students get the classes that they want, but there is that chance that if a class fills up or if they've had over-enrollment, then it might not be possible.
Other questions?
Is the client-based thesis done with a group or individually?
So the client-based capstone is done with a group.
Capstone,
Yeah.
okay.
So typically it will be a project that about between 3 to 5 students are assigned to a single group. So you would work, if you were undertaking the client-based capstone, you would work with 3 to 5 other students. You would have weekly meetings with your advisor. So even client-based capstone students have an advisor assigned, a faculty advisor. But you would also have individual meetings with your group. That would be at times, you need a bit more flexibility for the client-based capstone, because when the client wants you to meet with them, you have to make yourself available, so yes.
And one thing just to keep in mind for our MPP students, you don't have to pick if you're doing the thesis or your capstone until late in the spring semester of your first year. So a lot of our students right now are kind of in the midst of deciding what they want to do. And so to kind of help them prepare for that, we host info sessions, basically thesis first capstone, kind of show you examples of the different projects. So really you have, all the information you can to make that informed decision on what's really the best decision for you and your career. For a lot of our students, if they know they want to be a consultant and they're going to be working on, client projects, the client-based capstone might be a better fit. But if you have a very specific research interest and you want to study it, the thesis is your best option.
Who identifies the clients for the client-based project? Question.
So there's a bidding process. And we invite, people that are our alums, our faculty, their networks. We invite people to apply to be a part of the process. Once the applications come in, Micah Jensen is our faculty member in charge of the client-based capstone process. He will review each application and make sure that the ones that, a bunch of them get weeded out. And so the unfortunate thing about this long drawn process is that we don't have a confirmed list to share with you by the time you're making your decision. So when you decide whether it will be thesis or capstone, we can't tell you what the list of capstone projects is going to look like. But once you said you want to do the client-based capstone, towards almost the middle of the summer, before the fall semester in which you start your coursework, I send out a survey with a list of project summaries. You get to get to rank your top 5 or 6. Professor Shoney then makes the assignment based on the students that have, on that survey, which is very detailed, by the way. You indicate various things such as your comfort levels and your abilities with various aspects related to client-based capstone, such as data research analysis or presentation or group work or negotiations or things like that. And so we try to make a strong pairing based on that information. So essentially, we don't have that list to share with you when you're making your information, because it takes a bunch of time to pull that list together.
Yes, for the elective courses, are we allowed to take other schools' courses, or has to be local schools' courses?
So within Georgetown, you're absolutely able to take your electives in other departments at Georgetown. It's just a matter of working with Nirmala to kind of follow the process.
So here's the thing, right? So with I'm the person that signs off on your graduation clearance when you have completed your degree requirements. In order to get to that stage, I have to make sure that all the courses that you have taken actively can be counted towards your degree program. I send out very detailed instructions on how you can apply for non-public policy classes. My criteria for reviewing your request is that it shouldn't be a language class. So language classes are not allowed as part of your electives. It should be a class that's offered in real time. It cannot be a hybrid class. It cannot be something that's online because we have to meet our accreditation requirements. It cannot overlap with core content, so it has to be exclusive enough from core content. It has to be at a graduate, or here at Georgetown University, we have something called over-under, where we have a bunch of classes that are accessible to both undergraduates and graduates. So it can be over-under, but it cannot be an undergraduate level class. So I evaluate all of that, and I also make sure that it matches your learning goals for your program. If it doesn't, I come back to you and ask you to explain why. And if you can give me a reasonable explanation, we move on from there. Okay? Yeah.
I read somewhere that at Georgetown, language classes are free of tuition if it's required for your degree or your research. So if we want to take language classes, I guess if it can't be one of our electives, then that means we overload with it. And if we overload, will you sign off and say this is required for our degree?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Georgetown University, there are some degrees here, like the MSFS degree, for example, that has a language requirement. The court school does not. So the graduate school, which governs all of these different bodies, in the graduate bulletin, by the way, that graduate bulletin will be something you will want to read very carefully should you decide to accept your admission here. The graduate bulletin indicates that you can apply for what is called a language scholarship. So while we cannot count a course as part of your degree requirements, if a language course is related to your thesis research, for example, you will be allowed to apply for a language scholarship. You would take that, if you're approved, if you receive the language scholarship, you would take that class in addition to the rest of your course load for the semester. The language scholarship, because when you tie it to the thesis, it's not something like, that's an elementary level proficiency language course. It's typically an intermediate level language course that you would then request.
So that's tied to the thesis. So I'm MIDP, so that means it's only available to MPP?
Exactly. So,
okay.
yeah, unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
I know you mentioned that there are a few dual degree programs you have to be accepted to at the same time. As far as the other ones, what does the process of applying to the second degree look like, and what is the timeline for that?
So the only program among our dual degrees that requires simultaneous admission is the MPP MSFS. Okay, so if you want that dual degree, then you should apply so that you're accepted by the beginning of the fall. All of the other programs you can apply during your first semester here in the court school. So let's say, for instance, you're interested in the JD MPP dual degree, right? So you take the SAT or whatever it is you take to apply to the law school. Sometimes they don't even require it.
They use a GRE.
Yeah, they use a GRE. So you basically prepare an application package, meet their deadlines. Depending on what program it is, you want to be very careful about their application deadline so that you get your application in before that deadline. For the MPP MBA, I've had a bunch of people that were just accepted, so they'll start the dual degree next year. IO MBA, I've had a bunch of students who are indicating that they're considering the program, so they've been admitted, so they're making that decision now. So typically by this time in your first year, your second semester, you would have had to know whether or not you've been admitted. So you would have to have started your application process in the first semester. Yes?
For the evening program, I've realized take courses like at the business school or the school for service. How difficult is it to get into other evening courses?
The bulk of our courses here at Georgetown University are offered during the evenings, and that's electives across the board. There may be some, and I've seen the business school courses, for example, if you look at negotiations in the business school, they offer several different options in terms of time. So if you're an evening program student and you can only be in class in the evening, by the way, evening program students, if you can get your managers to sign off when you go into class during the day, we have no problem with that. We're happy to accept you. But let's say, for example, a negotiations class is being offered one section in the evening, one in the afternoon. You're welcome to apply specifically for the evening section. And if there's room, they'll give it to you. Yes?
What's the process for registering for classes, and do you have options for how many times the classes are offered.
Yes, that's great. So what program again?
The MBA MPP program.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so not too different from the regular first year full-time MPP though, because essentially your first year is going to be exactly the same as anybody else here in recording, right? Early in the summer, I will be sending out information to all of you on registration. The process, the courses, what courses you should be registering for, what your elective options are, how to select those electives based on your area interest. You'll get a whole bunch of information from me. It'll be an email with like about, 4 or 5 attachments on it. I'm really sorry in advance for that. But as you can tell, we're all about information here. So we give you a ton of information and then we help you make your decision based on that. For students that are MPP, for each of your required classes, Quant 1, Micro 1, Process, you have multiple sections to choose from. So depending on your time preferences, depending on your research that you've done about the faculty, and if there's a particular person you want to work with more than someone else, you would then prioritize that for registration. For those of you that are MIDP students, your core courses, we only have one section of each, so those are the ones that you'll be in. But your electives, you have options, and you can then select based on that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, is registering like an online process, I assume,
Yes.
right? And how does it determine in terms of like who registers first? Is it like based on
That's
credits?
another great question. So typically for incoming students, we have had registration open up live for everybody at the same time. So it's first come, first serve. That's how it's been for incoming students.
So I know you guys probably have a lot of other questions, but I'm also cognizant that I'm coming into lunchtime. So Nirmala and I will be around for the rest of the day. I'm going to leave our contact information up as well. If you guys have any questions about this entire process, please feel free to email us, grab us. We're happy to chat. Your faculty directors that you met this morning are also always happy to answer any questions specifically about, specifically about the program and the curriculum and things like that. So. Frank, are you picking up the MIDPs?
Yes, so just like in a crowded airplane, when the people who are making a connecting flight get to leave first, the MIDP candidates are the ones catching a connecting flight with me, and so please allow them to get in line first for lunch. There are only about 10 of them, so don't worry, there'll be plenty of food left for the rest of you. And the general rule is if you've already committed to coming, then you can take 2. But if a third sandwich will put you over the edge, go ahead and take 3, all right? So help yourself, there's plenty of food. MIDP, please come on out.
You guys will follow Frank upstairs for your lunch.